myself and Inspector Grubb today downstairs, and we are looking for people using their mobile phones. What we'll do, we'll capture the video evidence, and then what we'll do is we'll ticket them later in the post. They will get their 6 points and 200 fine for the offence. It's a really effective way of us catching people. It is the easiest and most prolific way of doing it. In 2.5 hours last time, we caught 41 offenders. So myself and Inspector.
So this is a video that Warren's just put, and it shows, this is a really good example of when you see the police, right, are on the bus and they haven't paid to get on the bus. They're riding on the bus for free. The bus company is a private company. It has a contract from the council. The bus isn't free for us. If you're a pensioner, you get a bus pass and there are certain things like that, right? But the bus company is private. The bus services and routes and so forth are negotiated through the council because, there are certain laws and there is certain cooperation with the council. And obviously, certain people of a certain ages don't have to pay for travel or get a discount on travel. But, it's a private company. So why would a person, get a free bus pass or even a discount on a bus pass? Well, because of status, student. The bus company doesn't care whether someone's a student or not. How do they get the bus cheaper? An old age pensioner, Bill Gates or Elon Musk, because it's law. Right, it's to do with citizenship and the reason and purpose of use and your status, right? These are laws set by the government regardless of whether it's a private company or not. Now, notice that the police don't have to pay for the bus. I've seen them get on the bus and I've never seen them scan a police card to say, right, beep, beep, 2 police officers use this bus at this day, and some sort of charge goes through the government to the police and we pay for it, the taxpayer, for that ride, that particular ride. So they're not like that bus journey that their police are on now. They're not like beep, beep. They're not scanned for it. It's not like, Officer 363 and 734 use the bus on this day. And then, the bus company kind of say, right, to the government, right, the police use the bus on this date and you owe us, whatever it is, £3.60 or whatever. And then they claim it back from the taxpayer, the private bus company. No, I've never seen a police officer do that ever. I've sat on the bus and watched them get on. They just walk on. So they're exempt. I'm sure it's just they are exempt because of their status in public, civilian state. They are police for police. They're using the bus for police purposes, and you don't pay. Now I want to get into that area of law for not paying for things, but even though it's a private company, due to the reason that you're using the service or the reason you're using it being exempt, right? Now, an example of this is in an act of law called the Representation of the People Act, which I've just been reading recently. And for petition elections, if you are a candidate for an election, whether it's a local council election, if you're trying to be a councillor or an MP, if you're the candidate and you're on the ballot, you're allowed to post one communication to each of the electors, and obviously so the councillor are allowed to do that as well. You're allowed to send one communication to each of the electors concerning the election, and you don't pay for it. I'm going to find out how you do it. If you've ever wrote to Royal Mail before or sent anything, sometimes you write on their free post, but it could be that some businesses have a franking machine and a number, and it gets franked under a certain number. I'm very interested to find out what they put on the stamp or the letter, if the candidate or the political party, if there's a particular code, you have to just write on there, free postcode, or if every political party or candidate has got like a almost similar to a company or business with a franking, they've got like a franking number or machine for their thing and they just frank it with the thing. It will be something like that, but I'm going to ring up Royal Mail and ask, because I'm quite certain that although in a petition you're opposing the government, and once if you obtain an election or a referendum, it's going to be paid for by the government. Like, you know, if you petition for a referendum and then you get the referendum, then all those communications will be free. But the petition to get it, it's non-profit. It's for purposes of government. It's not for you personally. And if you're collecting signatures from the public on a matter of political concern or interest, I'm starting to think that really, I think that there's an argument for not having to pay, but I don't know how they're going to track or take account of, you know, how many letters you send to each person, because it says in the law really it should just be one communication for each cause or each matter. I'm absolutely certain that really, because you're using the right to petition clause that you can't be held to any commitments and so forth, really, if you go out walking collecting signatures and then you get on a bus and you actually got like, you know, like a clipboard and you're collecting petition signatures, really, you're eligible to at least claim the tax back from the government for that bus ride, if not all of the expenses, because the thing is with a petition, right, like in the Inquiries Act, you're collecting evidence. It's evidence of public concern or evidence of facts which will prove the case or the matter to the government, right? Now, what the police are doing there is they're collecting evidence. They're collecting evidence for a criminal case, right? You might be collecting evidence for a civil case, right? If you're collecting evidence for a civil case, then if you win the case, you can claim costs back. Or the person who wins the claim, if you lose the case, you pay all the costs. If you win the case, you get all the costs paid, but it's either one or other of the parties, I think. So the costs are still covered within the case. It's not that the costs aren't covered within the case. Now, the thing with a petition is it's not run under the law of the elections legislation, and the Petitions Committee don't have any procedure rules. All of the advertisements we do in the promotion is through the Town and Country Planning Act, and it's exempt from all those, all consent and so forth is exempt, automatic consent. Why and how through the Act? It is kind of a little bit complicated to explain, but I'll try my best to explain it to you. You get automatic deemed and express consent, which is permission from the council. That Act gives you it, Town and Country Planning, even for the use of paint, by the way, Class C with F. It's Class E, which is for elections and referendums, right? But Class E for elections and referendums comes with all the legislation and rules for elections and referendums. Class F uses the right to petition. And actually, you can use both, but the right to petition isn't restricted by the certain rules and regulations of elections and referendums. You're trying to get an election or a referendum, which is going to be run by certain rules, and then you can post things for free. But the petition uses the enactment of the 1688 Bill of Rights, and that Act is in fact more protective than the election petition rules or referendum rules, because you can't be held to any commitments for undertaking activities to gather the petition signatures, right? Gathering the petition signatures could be for something like for a public inquiry. If you want a public inquiry into Hillsborough, right, which a public inquiry is an investigation, and they can also refer matters to the High Court, even criminal matters or civil matters to the High Court, right? You got to understand that you're collecting evidence. You're collecting evidence of public support and concern when you collect the signatures. You're collecting statements from the public. Now, these two officers, they can't prosecute people for this mobile phone offence without their statements. And that's why they've got two police officers there. You can't be convicted on the evidence of one person. So one officer can't do it. I think he might be able to do it if he films it with his statement, but they've got two officers because they need two statements, really. And if you refuse to answer any questions, although they're trying to use law to make you, to compel you to reply, there's no right to remain silent when you're in a car anymore, and so forth. Well, I guess if you ignore the letter in the post, then they'll come around and arrest you, and then I suppose you've got the right to remain. Ultimately, you have got the right to remain silent, I suppose, because if you just completely ignore the letter, eventually they'll just, you send the police round eventually, and then at that point you've got the right to remain silent, I suppose. Although they're putting certain offences, extra offences. Although they might raise the offence to a higher offence. Like these offences for speeding and so forth aren't that serious, but then if you don't give your details, then you might be liable to a higher offence, but then at least you have got the right to remain silent, if you see what I mean. But they're collecting evidence. They're on the bus collecting evidence for a case to the government, a criminal case to the government that someone broke the law. It could be, you could be on a bus with a civil claim to a court that the council hasn't done this or that a company is spilling chemicals, and you could be on the bus getting evidence because you haven't got a car, and then when you go to the civil court, and then when you claim costs, then, you put your receipt in, and you're like, oh, well, I had to go on the bus to gather evidence, and, and then in your court costs, then you'll get it back. This is it. So it's paid for. Now, when you're petitioning Parliament, you're not operating under the civil procedure rules or criminal procedure rules. You're operating under the right to petition the Parliament, and it is that you can't be held to any commitments. So, really, if you have got the petition printed out, the petition number, like some of these 20 mile an hour and ULEZ are actually on the government and Welsh website, petition number, whatever it is, stop ULEZ or this 20 mile an hour speed limit, you might want to gather evidence for that, to submit and attach. So really, I don't think that you have to pay for the bus. And I don't think that you have to pay the bus at the point when you get on it. And if the bus driver and the bus company understand what you're doing and what the reason for you using the bus is for, and the petition number and the case, and they really understand what it actually is and that it's registered with government, and if they understand the legislation you're using, and if they understand that, you could be on the bus with a clipboard asking people on the bus to sign, right, as well. But you could also be doing a survey and gathering evidence, like, if, you want the government to, an inquiry into chemicals because, there's a chemical spill from a factory, and you go out on the bus on the top deck filming all the, pink smoke coming out of the factory, you're getting evidence then. This is it. This is when you're getting into the point of Stop ULEZ, when you're filming some of the actions and you're filming some of the Stop ULEZ campaigns and uploading it to the group for campaign promo as well as evidence. And this is when the police are taking, like, James Carson's camera off him and his phone off him, or, you know, Matt Hardy or someone, or Prisoners No More, and they're taking the camera off them. And what James Carson's saying is that, oh, I'm a journalist, you can't take my equipment off me, I'm a journalist. But what I've pointed out to Carson is that journalists aren't allowed to support or oppose a campaign, not for major news or publications like, you know, Vote Khan Out. You can't really have a journalist or a major news thing like really promoting Get Khan Out, because then journalists are meant to be just on-site reporting, impartial. This is why I'm arguing with Carson. It's not a good idea to claim journalist. He wants to claim journalism, and he's got a journalist pass and so forth for his equipment. But what I'm saying to Carson is this: if he needs to understand that all the legislation and those acts for a journalist and not taking your equipment off you, they are not as important and not as powerful and not as enforceable as the right to petition, which is Class F for advertisements. When you're filming and making an advertisement, also when you're out collecting signatures or gathering evidence for the campaign, you're protected from the police. And they shouldn't even be trying to accuse you of doing a crime. Really, they can't accuse you of doing a crime. Really, not anything to do with, and this is the thing, you know, if you're being accused of doing damage or whatever, you know, what damage is it, you know, and is it even damage, you know, is it not, you know, requisited for making a promotional production to advertise a campaign? You know, this is the thing, when you're out gathering evidence for a petition, you're protected because you are out gathering evidence on site. Like these police officers are gathering evidence, but not for a police case, for the petition campaign case. Now, I think that you don't have to pay for letters and stamps if you send one communication. But how can the post office keep track of how many communications you send into each person? You know, this is why I want to find out what system they're using for the elections, because if it's franking and if you get a number, I'm starting to think that you can apply to Royal Mail or the post office for like a number, a registered number to the petition campaign. And the thing is that everyone should be able to use that number for purposes of that campaign. If it's a communication about that campaign, I mean, then Royal Mail can have a system and they can record, you know, or, you know, if it's, you know, one communication to each address and each person, then they can, like, you know, take note of, you know, that person's already had a communication sent concerning that petition. But, you know, if it's a national petition, not a local one, then you should, in theory, this is true. This is like, there's a strong case for this, that you could send one communication to every person in England, every registered elector. Now, that's a hell of a lot to do for one person. So everyone might be able to do, you know, a little bit each and help out. You know, like, you know, one person from the group could, you know, send 100 letters, and another person from the group could send 100 letters, and just make sure that you don't send them to the same person or people to collect signatures. There is a strong case for that. But there's also a strong case for using the bus. This is when we're getting into my case when I got my driving licence taken off me because I was investigating on site. You know, when I was on the A40 and I was gathering evidence of illegal road signage, which wasn't disputed actually, I got accused of dangerous driving, but apparently it turns out that it was only about 20 mile an hour speed they accused me of going at, just because I went between some traffic cones and up a slip road that was apparently meant to have been closed off. But the accusers were Highways Agency anyway, Highways England, and they made a false statement anyway. But I was basically doing what like these police officers are doing here. They're not even paying to go on the bus, They're not even paying to go on the bus. Now, when I was driving, I got the privilege of borrowing a vehicle, but it all comes down as well. Also, other factors are how much are you using the vehicle for one reason or another reason. Some people have insurance for domestic pleasure. It can be used for domestic and it can be used for your own use as well. And also taxation. When things get taxed, in all the taxation law, they do this percentage thing where if the object or item is over 51% in a zero rated use, then you don't pay tax on it. If it's a magazine, zero rated, but if posters aren't, but if it's a poster magazine, then if it's the majority of the magazine is only a few posters in it and it's mainly a magazine and less posters in it, you don't pay tax on it. On the vehicle, right? On these stop ULEZ vehicles, this is what I've been trying to tell people, right? If you transform your own vehicle into a advertisement for stop ULEZ on all four sides and the front and back, and you've got like the petition number on it, the number for like that 20 is plenty, the Wales petition, or one of the stop ULEZ petitions, and for more than 51% of the time that vehicle is in use, it's being used to promote the campaign as an advertisement for the petition more than it's being used for your own personal vehicle for you to get you around or to go to work. That means that if you're promoting one of the Stop ULEZ petitions on it, I would say that you can get this checked with a lawyer, but I don't think many lawyers even know about it or have explored it, because there aren't really any lawyers who are getting involved in the right to petition bill, in the right to petition law, because there's only really one law. There are some other acts of legislation that apply when you are using printed material. There is legislation for the elections when you're using a vehicle, right? For elections, when you're using a vehicle, there's certain law for it in place for elections and referendums. But for the petition to get it, to obtain it, I've asked the petitions committee this, and I've asked them to tell me what the law is. And the only law that they can come out with is that Standing Orders 145A, which is what they operate on. And like any normal court, you should be able to apply to them to use those powers when you need or want them for subpoena or to summon people or for questions and answers for petition cases. But they only use it for themselves. They don't really... You can use freedom of information. They will go out of their way to reply to a freedom of information. That's a power used by the law. Right, tell me this, tell me that. So you're actually asking for information. You're compelling them to give information using freedom of information. But what if that information is held by another party or another person or another company? Or what happens if you're using a right through running a petition with the committee to share or publish an advert, and someone is obstructing you from publishing or sharing the advert? Like, for example, on the, Facebook, right? Facebook, these groups, when you publish in these groups, when you publish to these groups, when you publish on Twitter, when you share on Instagram, through email, electronic mail, it says share by email, but which company? Well, there are about 10, 20 or 30 different email companies or more. It means all of them, Instagram, Hotmail, Gmail, BT, Internet Mail, Yahoo Mail, all of them. When it's a communication for a petition, it's meant to be secured and protected to make sure that you can send that communication. They're actually giving you directions to use those platforms and share. Also, really, YouTube. But some people are getting their channels or pages removed, like Matt Hardy, or some of the groups are getting taken down. And really, it's an advert that has a legal requirement to be published or shared. And the Petitions Committee are not contacting these companies to enforce the advert staying in place. Like when you're in public and you do a paper one, that's what that deemed an express consent is. You can put it up, you can place it, and the council and police aren't allowed to take it down. They're not allowed to remove it, right? And really, when you put one in the newspaper, it's like witness appeals in the newspaper. When you put a witness appeal in the newspaper, in that class F in the town and country planning, it says that to serve a function of government, to serve an actual function, and through the use of the enactment and through directions from Parliament, which they publish on the website. So they're directing you to use private platforms for the promotional. But what happens is when those private platforms refuse you or remove it, what's happening is that we're not getting backup with enforcement from the Petitions Committee, mainly but they've got powers to do that. They've actually got powers, 145A3 powers, to enforce, to compel, like a court, and they will. They're doing things for freedom of information. I mean, it's a miracle freedom of information exists. Tell me this, tell me that. I want to know this numbers or that. They're doing it, but when you say, they've taken his Facebook group down, or they've taken my YouTube channel down, or they've removed an advert, or this or that, they're not saying, they're not writing you a letter from the House of Commons saying, so-and-so's channel, you can write the URL, the link, the ID, and a letter from the House of Commons, put it back up, restore it, which, they should do. Because it's a committee, it's like a small tribunal. It has got powers to compel when it comes to evidence and material and facts. So, it can enforce things that are used through the Town and Country Planning Act, through Class F and E, but E is mainly for elections and referendums, but for the petition, you're pursuing obtaining an election or a referendum. You can obtain referendums. So, notice the word platform. You're using a platform. Now, the bus is private. What is the bus? It's a private platform. It's a moving platform. It's privately owned and operated. But all of its schedules and timetables and everything is negotiated in with the council because it's a joint, it's civilization, it's society. The bus schedules, timetables, the various acts for the bus. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see actually the actual enactment that says, a bus driver in any of the bus acts, if there are any, transport acts where a police officer doesn't have to pay on the bus or when it's being used for policing purposes. There is some stuff about it in the elections petition rules, but you're not allowed to give people, believe it or not, you may find this funny, but apparently you can't give someone a lift. You can't give someone a lift to the polling station. It's illegal. Unless they've been sleeping over or staying at your house, or they're a member of your family, of the household. But the elector, like Jeremy Corbyn, can give you a lift there if you're going to vote for him, or he can appoint a vehicle to be giving people lifts on his behalf, right? this is kind of crazy, but it's similar to this sending letters and mail, right? And there are also some clauses about advertising and promoting on the way to the polling station. But they used to come round to your house. They used to have official stamps on all the voting material. And they used to come round, like, you know, when you actually are doing a petition yourself. They used to come round to the houses and collect the signatures and the votes. But now you go to the polling station. And if you notice, most polling stations are within walking distance to the ward. If you notice, every area has got its own polling station that's within walking distance, usually even to kind of elderly people. Although, apparently, according to the representation of the people, like, you can't give someone a lift there. You know, which is kind of insane if they're a stranger. There are certain rules over lending people vehicles, but it gets a bit more complicated. But in that act, for the candidate, the person who is on the ballot, the person who is named, their vehicle is designated. Their vehicle is declared for use for elections, right? And certain law applies to it. So you can have a vehicle declared for use for petitioning for elections. So this is when it comes down to, what about a petition to the government? What about a public inquiry petition? What about Stop ULEZ campaigns? Can you declare a vehicle for officially being used for a petition? If you can do it for election petitions. And this is when you get into, it says that on the vehicle that, you know, you put a notice on there to inform the public that it's been used for that purpose. Now, would it be only the person who started the petition, the person who started the petition to, you know, the Welsh government, you know, end 20 mile an hour speed limits? Is that person the only person who can declare their vehicle for use for a petition and they have to go around collecting the signatures? Or can anyone else that they appoint also use it as well? Because you can have people using election vehicles on behalf of the candidate, the person. Really, surely, the right to petition, it is the legislation. All of the other acts, like the Town and Country Planning Act, when you use that act refers you to the use of the 1688 Enactment Bill, right? That's the law. Through the Class F. And this is really the same in all the Criminal Damage Act, in the... you can't use the Criminal Damage Act when it's an advertisement or promotional representation. And this is the thing what we're getting into with James Carson. When they're filming on site to promote the petition campaign and publishing it to a section of the public, the groups, to promote the campaign, you're protected for production of that representation. And this is where the immunity from Class F comes in. With Carson, and protects his equipment from the police seizing it, right? It's not criminal damage because you are making a representation to the public to promote the campaign, adverts, right? Even if you egg a car, tough, it's insured. It's almost like making a movie, really. What do you need to make a movie? What do you need to make a film or production for the petition? Fair enough with the movie, everything is kind of like booked in, blah, 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 insured. But this is where we're getting into with Gail Bradbrook and Claire Farrell now and people like that. The juries are acquitting them. And it comes down to the fact that, according to the law, if you look at the 1661 Tumultuous Petitioning Act, which was in place all the way up to 1986, you aren't to be... The police can't take you to the magistrates' courts, because they're the hundreds courts, the magistrates' courts. the magistrates' courts are the hundreds courts, right, in the county court. They can't take you there. It had to be the Crown or the King's Bench. And the King's Bench was a special court of Parliament for, grievances with the King, which were the petitions. And all the other courts have been discontinued. They had the Appealate Jurisdiction Act, which they got rid of. But in half of these instances, it's all legislated to protect you anyway, right? And even in those election petitions to the government, they're supposed to prosecute any offences like fraud, any fraud or, corruption, election frauds are supposed to be prosecuted at the High Court. And in the 1960 Election Petition Act, it says that you can't be prosecuted through common law, although they introduced imprisonment that you could only be fined if you are someone involved in operating or running the petitions. You could only be fined, even if you were fraud. If you were using fraud in the elections, you could only be fined and not prosecuted at common law. But then they introduced it, or that you could actually go to prison, but it's prosecuted at the High Court, if at all. And it's looking like it's the Supreme Court now, or the Royal Court of Justice. I know this is a big one to push, but I don't think that the police are allowed to be prosecuting any Stop ULEZ people or 20 is Plenty campaigners or protesters if they're designated people by the people running the petitions through the magistrates' courts for start or at all. And I'm starting to really, really believe that you don't have to pay for the bus if you're collecting signatures or surveying to gather evidence or making a video for the groups or for the campaign or sending letters. Now, I'm not suggesting that you just don't have to buy a stamp and you just write on it, for a petition. Theoretically, you should be able to do that. But the post office are going to want to say that, people sending more than one communication to every elector. But, Royal Mail's a private platform, a private business. So there should be something. Well, the petitions committee, really, you've got a petition number. You've actually got a petition number. It's like a tax number or any other number. That number should be being used. You could go to Royal Mail really and say, right, make me a franking machine for this petition with the Petitions Committee in Parliament. It's petition number 26364. Knock me a franking machine number up, and get me a machine. And, everyone in the group's going to start, sending people letters from the... from the electors, get the list of everyone from the electors list, get the voters list. Although they're trying to hide the voters list, they're trying to get people to take themselves off the electors lists now. Can you imagine if you had like the yellow pages or the phone book from 1980 or 1970 when everyone's phone number was in there? You could just go down there writing, Mr. Braithwaite, and it has their address on. You write them a letter, say, will you sign my petition? And then you could theoretically put, stamp it with petition number 63494 Parliament, and then send them a letter. Like, if you did one page of the phone book and then another person from the group did another page of the phone book and then another person from the group did another page from the phone book, then, everyone did a bit of it, then that was one communication sent to every elector, if you see what I mean. But we've been taken over by these corporate entities. We've been taken over by this BlackRock Vanguard, these corporate entities that David Cameron, sells off. And all the powers we've got, all of these powers that you really, if you know what you're doing, you could use them. We're being totally undermined. Although we have got online now. We have got, Facebook, email, Messenger. But for example, I am sending communications through Messenger about that 20 is Plenty petition and trying to collect some funds to get an advert in the newspaper. And I sent like 40 messages yesterday And then my messenger got blocked for 24 hours because this messenger at Facebook are like, you sent too many messages. Well, I'm like, I need to email all 171 people who liked the thread. Well, they're actually illegally obstructing it. And this is one thing with Mark Zuckerberg where I think they're breaking the law. And unfortunately, Nick Clegg works there as well at Facebook. It's an electronic form of communication, just like email or Hotmail, you know. I know on Hotmail, I think there is a daily limit on Hotmail, like 100. I think you can send something like 120 messages on Hotmail a day, something like that. It does have a limit, but the messenger limit is being made a lot lower now for some reason. And if it was for the petition campaign, really, there's a case to Hotmail to contact them to tell them to lift the restriction, you know, because it's for this type of purpose. So, you know, we are out gathering evidence ourselves, but the thing with the type of evidence that we're gathering, depending on what type of petition it is that it's the evidence you're getting is to demonstrate to the public that they should support the campaign. So what you're doing is you're really gathering you're wanting to get more and more people to sign and support it. Because what you're doing is you're showing them why they should support it or promoting it to them. And that's still an advertisement. And that's what the police don't like. The police don't like the fact that you can do that. And there is a lot of restrictions on it for elections, like for East Mogg, for MPs and so forth. But that's once you've got the election or referendum. When you're trying to get it, you've got to try and get as many people as possible. And they only give you 6 months. So there aren't any restrictions really on numbers. In fact, it's free and open, but it's a function of government. It actually is a function of government. Now, they talk about sponsorship and funding. You know, like if the thing with the petition is it's your own cause, it's your own campaign. It's almost like Labour or Tory, their own party. So they've got to get money in and sponsorship money, you know. But, you know, they do get costs covered for certain things, you know. Even in Parliament, you know, some of them claim costs and so forth. But, so the question is, if you are an independent petition, right, but you don't have much money, are there things that you don't have to pay for, like bus travel or stamps and posting things? I'm not saying that you could just go seize anything like Roger Hallam did from the supermarket and give out food you know, as part of a promotional thing. But I'm talking about like these things. I'm not saying you could just go and seize loads of stickers or seize loads of posters, you know, from B&Q and seize loads of paper. I'm not suggesting that. I think that should be paid for by your sponsors. But the thing is, the petition is a function of government and you're bringing a case to the government. And the thing with buses is that you're getting like free bus pass or heavily reduced bus pass just for being elderly, right? Now, that ain't a function of government being elderly, is it? They're just, we've got laws that, you know, if you're elderly or if you're even young, you get different prices. The police are bringing a case. They haven't even found criminal yet. They haven't identified a criminal and they haven't said, right, that guy stole a car, now I need to commandeer the bus to catch him, right? At least then they're in hot pursuit. They've got a offender and then they're pursuing the offender, right? They're actually just going for a cruise, going for a ride, going for a leisurely ride. Oh, let's see what criminals we can find. I'm going to collect some evidence of people supporting this ULEZ campaign. It's a function of government. We need to stop it. We need to stop these police cameras. These police chiefs are getting these cameras commissioned through government. We want to uncommission them. They're using the cameras to look for people. Well, in government, we want to stop that. And we're going to get evidence to show that people don't want them, don't want the cameras, right? So you need to find persons, witnesses, who will sign to say these cameras are no good. They're an invasion of our privacy. These police are pervs. They're perving. They're voyeurs. They're perving at us. What business of it is the police? What people are up to. We want these cameras removed, or we want the law changed. We want the law changed for mobile phone use, right? There's a police commissioner in the council meeting saying, we want more cameras, Mr. Councillor. Can we commission more cameras for the police, right? Who's paying for them? Us, right? So to bring a case to the government and council to oppose the police, the leader of this man here, this bald guy, we need to collect evidence from witnesses in the public that they sign and say, we don't want to be voyeured and perved by these police perverts, by these police voyeurs, by these paedophiles. We don't want them spying and perving on us. We want to scrap these cameras. So you're collecting statements for the public. I think this is voyeurism. I think these are peeping Toms. I think these are, peeping Harrys. This is it. You're collecting evidence in a case to the Parliament of England that you could even have a public inquiry on the matter. So you're policing for a policy that, you haven't had it proved yet. None of these police officers have proved in a court of law that any of these... None of these police officers have proved in a court of law that any of these drivers are guilty. They're trying to. You haven't proved in Parliament yet that these cameras aren't wanted by the public, but you're trying to. You're pursuing that. So, it's a function of government to actually even make what these police officers are doing not lawful, or even remove the power from them. So why should you have to pay for the bus? Why do you have to pay for the bus? I agree that, pay for your materials or pay for your whatever if you can get sponsorships, but for certain things like the bus or for letters and stamps, it's democratic function. And I know the private platforms, but why aren't the police paying? We are we pay for them. You and me pay for them. Now, you might say, well, not all members of the public support this campaign or cause, so why should the taxpayer pay for it? Well, I think the thing is that, with the elections, they've already petitioned to get on the ballot, and they're on the ballot, and then they're going to have like an election, or they're going to have a referendum. The thing is, once you register the petition, and then once you start getting signatures, you are getting the public behind you. A lot of people give money to the causes, but I still think that for the buses and for the mail, the stamps, well, if you look at, you don't, put it this way, you don't have to pay for commercial advertising in public. You get deemed an express consent. That's how you can put the material up. You don't have to pay any advertising company in this country. No one really has to pay for advertising. This is where we're looking at the newspaper as well. Now, the thing with the newspaper is this. I know that you're not supposed to pay tax for the newspaper adverts, but they've been charging it. And I know that, really, if you go back in time before all these big corporate entities started going wild after David Cameron sold everything off, if you look at some of the smaller newspapers like Bristol newspaper and, some of the small Shropshire, Ludlow newspapers, some of them are still offering free public notice, like a free small ad, but, just one for one matter. Not every day or whatever. It's a little bit like the elections. You can send one communication for free. The thing is, all of the newspapers used to do this, one free advert if it is for a petition or a political matter, but just one. You can put one communication. But they stopped doing it because really they've been taken over by the Tories and they don't really want people to do it or afford it. You're not supposed to pay tax for the newspaper. There are some taxes that the newspaper have to pay, but they can recover those monies back through the actual price of the item, but not tax, because you don't pay tax. You're not meant to pay tax for newspapers anyway, or for small adverts. It's not taxable, so why have a tax figure? If they want to claim some tax back, they put that onto the normal price, and they're recuperating that money back to them. They're not. The buyer doesn't pay tax. Put it this way, right? And not anything that's declared as tax to the buyer. But the thing is, you're not meant to be paying for those newspaper adverts, really, in the traditional scheme of it, until it got warped. What this does is it prices us all out of being able to go in the newspaper. No one can afford it. Not that you should be paying anyway. And then they end up getting people like Boris Johnson with a column in the newspaper. These people are ruling the newspapers, championing the newspapers. Boris Johnson even got a job in the newspaper while he was Prime Minister of England. He's completely controlling the public view. What the newspaper should be done is, it's actually not lawful for Johnson to be in the newspaper, I don't think. And we should all be able to have at least one free advert concerning each petition case once to all of the public, for free. And then, but they don't want that. They're actually trying to stop us doing that. And this is what's happened with all of the online and the emails. The email was very powerful for petitions until people started getting powerful email lists, and then they introduced, I think, all that spam and so forth was set up to disrupt people. And then they take away the Appeal Act Jurisdiction Act when Labour start the petitions committee in Parliament. They pull that. Every step of whenever technology improves and it makes it a lot better for us, they always seem to try and steal away something from it. So I think that if you're going out to collect petition signatures for a petition, I think that you can, show the petition number in the clipboard to the bus driver, or if you're gathering evidence of some sort, because really anyone, I know that these are constables in uniform and identifiable, it's almost like I'm not suggesting impersonate a police officer. I'm not suggesting do that. But for example, if you put a police uniform on and had a little CB radio walkie-talkie and you get on the bus and the driver recognised you as a police officer, then he wouldn't charge you for getting on there. I still don't think they've got a card. They might do. They might have to scan it. It just might have been that they didn't bother scanning it, on the occasions that I saw them. But, that's an example. You've been identified. This is the thing. If it's identified about, the right to petition use of a bus, then, it's casework. And again, a petition can be an investigation for an inquiry. And on that basis, you are policing. You're actually doing a policing role at a lot higher level than local policing. It's a national level investigation. For example, the Hillsborough example is a good example because, you know, it's just a good example of an investigation that you can have through government, which would need evidence and so forth, you know. I mean, you could really apply to the bus company for a bus pass in the first place to give you a free bus pass. You know, you could say that, you know, I need to travel for this or that to collect signatures. You know, if you wrote to them and, you know, set it out in writing, they might give you a free bus pass anyway to cover you for it for a certain period. You know, you could do it that way. I still think that, you know, people really, if you got down to it, I don't know what would be the point arguing in court anyway, because all it would do is get like a document and a court order to say that you're right, and then you'd show it to the bus company. You know, then what? You know, it becomes common knowledge, you know. This is the thing. It should be common knowledge anyway. This is the thing. It already kind of is knowledge. This is the thing. It already is legal. You know, people just aren't using it. For an example, Max Hill, the leader of the Crown Prosecution Service until he stepped down, didn't even know or claim that he didn't know about the Town and Country Planning Act for placing the deemed and express consent automatically or for use of paint. He claimed that he didn't know about it. How can you be the leader of a Crown Prosecution Service and not know that? But yeah, he's throwing around criminal damage charges, muscling it, but wrongly muscling it. And this is the problem with these coppers, really. This is the problem with these police officers. They go to a police college and then they get told this and that by a couple of inspectors and a chief who really is just a bloke. And when it comes down to it, we've got blokes who are in charge of all of England, the Crown Prosecution Service of all England. And Max Hill doesn't know 2 acts of law. He doesn't know the 2 acts of law that are actually made specifically for the action in question. It's almost like walking down the road and not knowing the law for walking down the road. You know, when you take your driving test, you're expected to know the law and know the road. That's how you pass your test. How Max Hill passed a legal test or a legal test to say that he was qualified to run the Crown Prosecution Service is beyond amazement. But the face of this guy, the facial features of him, is like some numbskull. He looks like Rowley. He looks like the spitting image of Mark Rowley. They're like twins. They're like peas out of a pod. I think they look like embezzlers. They look like shoemakers, tool makers. They look like high-level accounting fraud people. To me, you know, bald glasses, they look rough. You know, Max Hill and Rowley, they're rough characters. They look like high-level criminals because they are using the law against us and equipment, machines. They're like military guys in a way, but they don't know the law they're using. They don't understand it. And in a way, then they're accusing us of terrorism. Oh, they're all terrorists, right? But they're the ones with the toys. They're the ones, they're taking, you know, guns and knives off everyone. Yeah, you know, the right to bear arms for defence. How do you defend yourself? It's a military operation. These are the people who, we've got a military. They're armed. We've got armed police, in airports, but they're armed. But then they say, oh, well, we're protecting you, defending you. Well, we can protect yourself. You got the right to bear arms for defence, so you can protect yourself. They don't like that, though. They don't like the concept of it. Ultimately, these men are military commanders. They blow people up. These people, if the Prime Minister whims it, like Boris Johnson waltzing off to Ukraine, telling Zelensky not to, make peace with Putin, these people are commanding airships, aircraft carriers, submarines, missiles, tanks, military equipment, guns, AK-47s, and they aren't afraid to use them. These people are killers. They're armed men. They shouldn't exist theoretically. Theoretically, these people shouldn't exist. Tanks shouldn't exist. But warships, helicopters, they shouldn't exist. But they exist. But who is it? Rowley. It is Rowley. It is Rowley. Max Hill. These are the people. And what they're doing is they are armed with the law and a unit of people obedient to them to blackmail people through courts and torture them mentally and physically to give over money or to imprison them when they actually don't know the law. They actually completely disregard and ignore the law. Max Hill is almost like a military commander against his own, the citizens of the people. You might as well have Putin, because I don't know what Max Hill's doing. But yet, these people are getting away with it, and all they do is stand down, stand down, stand down. Yet, where are the Supreme Court prosecutions? Like in the elections petitions rules. Criminal, criminal, criminal. Election fraud, election fraud, election fraud. Embezzlers, false accounting. I mean, what does Max Hill want? False accounting, perverting the course of justice, abuse of process, professional negligence. There's 4 there. Which is the most serious out of them? Where is the Supreme Court proceedings? We don't want him to stand down. It's okay, I'll give a little token. Stand down, stand down. Another token. Oh, so sorry, stand down. There's another one. Stand down, stand down. No! In America, they're prosecuting Trump, or trying to. Where is the newspaper headlines? Max Hill in Supreme Court on perversion of the course of justice, abuse of process. But they slither through the cracks. They slip through the middle of the cracks of the walls, these people. It's like Max Hill, or it's almost like a hologram of Mark Rowley. It's so like Mr. Ben separated at birth, never seen in the same room together. Is Max Hill Mark Rowley? Is Mark Rowley Max Hill? This is it. He's never seen in the same room together. Well, Max Hill is Mark Rowley. This is the tricks that, you get from Sir Peter Fahey. When you turn up at court in Salford Magistrates Court, who's that justice? The chief justice there in the middle looks a bit like Peter Fahey. I don't know whether it is him or not. Is it Peter Fahey, the chief magistrate, or is that is it like it could have been Peter Fahey. You almost spit an image of him. They say that they do all these criminal photography parades, witness parades, to identify criminals. Why is it whenever I see a picture of Rowley, I see a criminal? Whenever I see a picture of Max Hill, I see a criminal. It's like half of these Crown prosecutors study criminal psychology. They're fascinated with criminals. Half of the Crown Prosecution Service have a fascination with criminal minds. They do deep psychology degrees and get jobs in it. They're meant to be able to identify and spot them. Why is it when you line these people up? Oh, it's Rowley, Rowley. Max Hill, well, there's two criminals in a pod, you know, like embezzlers, almost like locksmiths with the bead of sweat running down the corner of the temple. He, you know, was the first person you would spot breaking into it, kicking a door down. They don't even need a locksmith. He's got his mob squad down, kicking the door in. You know, this is it. But yet all the claim is, oh, we're upholding the law, we're upholding the law. You know, well, we're making the law. We are making policy, and we are policing the pursuit of policy making. Because these police caricatures, the Rowley and Max Hill, they don't have a job to do. They come into work when there's no law on the table, right? There is no job to do. Right, let's do some policing, right? Well, there aren't any laws to police if you don't have any. So you've got these two Muppets on the bus, like peeping Tom through windows, right? These two Muppets here on the bus are like, you know, voyeurism, peeping Toms on the bus, right? Ooh, what can we see? If there is no law for mobile phone use in cars, they don't have a job to do. There is no job. There's nothing to police because there are no policies, there are no laws. Now, in order to get laws and make them, we need to get them put through Parliament, and we need evidence from the public that there should be a law for this or that, or there shouldn't be. And we are collecting evidence of that. Now, the police commissioner, he turns up in the council meetings and he says, oh, I'd like to get a load of new enforcement cameras. Or we go to Parliament, oh, we'd like some new enforcement cameras. Oh, would you? And whose money are you using for that? Or the public's? There's very strong evidence. I've got very strong, compelling evidence from all these police reports. Look at all these complaints. Oh, now he's using evidence now. Now we've got Rowley, the police commissioner, in the council meeting with evidence gained from the public, not on a bus. He could have asked people on the bus if he'd have wanted to. Could be Matt Rowley, sat on a bus, gathering witness statements from the public. Oh, not all those drivers shouldn't be using their phones. Add that to the pile of complaints that Rowley's got in from his office. Then he can go to the council meeting, chuck it on the table and go, I present a case for getting the laws changed on mobile phones and a lot of new cameras, Your Honour. Mark Rowley, police commissioner, right? But who's the opposition in that case? Who's at the table? Who's at the table on the defence or the opposition to Rowley's case to the council or government saying, we have evidence, Your Honour, that people don't want the cameras, people don't like them. They're opposed to them. They think they're peeping Toms. They think they are an abuse of privacy. They think they're unrequired. And here's my pile of evidence and witness statements and complaints gathered when I was on the bus from Numskull. You know, sat next to Numskull on the bus. There's Numskull on the bus looking out the window, painting daisies, looking for people on the mobile phones. There's someone sat on the bus, walking up and down the bus, collecting signatures from everyone on the bus, saying that they don't think there should be mobile phone laws. Right? So, why is Rowley on the bus, right? And I won't be surprised with Numskull arresting someone for getting on the bus without paying, right? To collect signatures on the bus that they don't believe there should be a mobile phone illegal. When in half of the states of America, it's not even illegal anyway. I'll just walk on the bus and start collecting signatures. Do you think that people should be able to use their mobile phone when they're driving? We can collect 18 signatures from that bus, right? But then Numskull here will arrest me. Yeah, I am opposing Numskull. I am opposing its chief in the council chamber of Parliament, right? But he's using his police officer to arrest me or stop me from doing it. So how am I gathering witness statements or promoting it? Stick a notice on the side of the bus, right? He's using his police force as a military opposition illegally against us. He is a military threat to this country. He is an armed threat. He's armed with armed live ammunition, with a truncheon, with a live taser. He is a threat to the public with those equipment. Who designed the equipment? Who made the equipment? Who is making it? I don't make tanks. I don't make bombs. I don't make weapons. Rowley needs to find out who is making the weapons, and he needs to send the police in there and arrest them all for the intent to kill. Rowley needs to walk into the weapons factory and arrest them all for the intention to aid and abet death and killing. But he can't do it because they're making guns for his